Welcome back to mckilliplife. My name is Amber, and this will be a project vlog for February the 15th, and it ends because a project went overnight into February the 16th, 2025. To start things off, West is working on the blinds in the living room, and I am rearranging lights. After watching the Space Maker Method YouTube channel, she talked about grouping like items together until you have a chance to make decisions about them. And I used this tactic for our lights. We had all sorts of lights in our dining room waiting until we had a chance to decide and discuss what we liked and what we didn't like. And lo and behold, we changed our mind and went with the lamps in the living room for the time being. I did stick the stick sconce lights in a closet because they are useful at times when you have a project that you need extra light on because they have more directional light. I'm not quite ready to get rid of them, but for the overall feeling and look of this room, we went for the lamps. And as I was moving things around, like taking this rower out of the room, definitely no place for the rower in this room, and we decided to, for the time being, put it in the dining room. And eventually, I'm planning on building a plant stand for the dining room, and there will hopefully be storage space for the rowing machine underneath it. But at least it's out of this room because it doesn't belong in this room. As I'm wandering around, shifting things and making decisions, West is making steady progress on those blinds. It's always helpful to have a husband who knows how to use his tools and is willing to pitch in. And today really ended up being just fine tweaks in this room. Like I was just putting a phone charging cable next to the recliner, which gets used often. Bringing in this gooseneck lamp for when I have projects I want the directional light on, especially like cross stitch or crochet. That light is very handy. Tweaking things, plugging things in, shifting furniture, rearranging pillows and blankets, and just putting final touches onto this room. That was what this day held for us. And as West was able to pause from his blinds, we worked on hanging that picture. That is one of the largest and heaviest pictures we have in our house. It came from my grandmother's house. She had it hanging in her house, and in one of her moves, she decided that she was ready to let go of it, and I like it. I think it's very atmospheric, and it's very nostalgic for me. But having two people to hang pictures makes it go pretty quickly. And here we're just testing to make sure the placement of the recliners okay. We're not going to be hitting the wall or anything. Once again, two people are helpful, moving the keyboard away from the window so Wes can get back there and work on the blinds. It is interesting looking back on these days because there's not like a massive difference in the room in terms of, oh, you shifted 7 boxes or you broke down a mountain of boxes, or, there's not huge differences. But the little things that make it home and make it worth living in and easy to live in, that's the things we were focusing on this day. And this day I actually had some mental space to tackle those little piles of sentimental things that I had unearthed several videos ago and just kept moving from place to place because I wasn't willing to sit down and look through them. Turned out the vast majority of them were from over 10 years ago, and it's amazing if you give yourself that much time to look at things. A lot of times you see it as trash and not needed because you didn't even remember you had it. I think out of that entire tin of things, I might have kept 1 or 2 things, but the rest of it was all trash. I did find some gift cards. That was useful. There wasn't much on them, but I'm assuming that they're probably still going to be useful. $5 here, $2 there. But it's all for stores I typically go to. I did find one larger one, and I was able to re-gift it because it's just the reason it's a larger thing is it's a store I don't go to. But it's nice to have these project days where you can just chip away at the things that need to be done and have each other's opinion about the things that need to be done as well. Having a problem-solving brain is very important when it comes to moving and decluttering and just working through home decisions like this. And in all that time, as I was looking through little papers, West finished the second window and was ready to move on to the third. He is getting a whole lot faster and streamlining the process of putting these up the more he does. Once this room is complete, we'll have 2 left to do, but that's for a different day because that goes into our home office. And the home office is going to be more of a challenge because there's a large desk with lots of things on it in front of those windows. So it's not as simple as this where you can just move some things aside and get to work. And that little red tin was full of lots of useful things. And I literally moved it into another room and said, this is a tin of useful things. And it now sits in the office waiting for me to distribute the useful things to their proper homes. This simply proves that the longer you give sentimental, quote-unquote, sentimental items, sometimes the easier it is to go through them. Time really does give you perspective on the things that matter to you. So one of the issues that we were facing when we came to this room is there are a couple different things we'd like to do here, but they require money. And after the move and after all of the little expenditures of moving into the house, we've basically gotten to the point of we need to stop spending money and start earning some more money in order to do these little projects that in all reality are optional. We can live without them. We would just prefer to have them in order to make the house exactly how we want it to. So, for example, you'll see that the accordion lumpy rug is no longer on the ground. It's rolled up over on the side, on the right-hand side. Because we got to the point where we both agreed we didn't think the rug had any more life in it. It was very crunchy. It was very old. And it wasn't coming back to life. A lot of our smaller rugs around the house relaxed after the move and vacuumed up nicely and were good to go. But unfortunately, we made the choice of this rug's not going to survive, so we need to go ahead and let go of it. And the whole question was, do we leave it in the living room as a tripping hazard and as a constant reminder of the fact that we want a different rug or something different in this room? Or do we go ahead and roll it up and take it away and just know that eventually we want a different solution for this room when we have some extra money? Another thing that we're thinking about is mounting the TV because it'd make it easier for all the different things that go underneath the TV. So here we are. Bye-bye, rug. Thank you for the time that we've had with you. But, mounting a TV when it does function, when it's sitting on a shelf, is kind of hard to justify when you're looking at your budget and going, funds are tight and we need to make up for the money we've already spent thus far. So at this point, we changed our focus to setting up the TV area. We have a TV, we have a Blu-ray DVD player, we have a PlayStation 2, and the TV is a smart TV to some extent, but it also has a Fire Cube connected to it. So that was the other argument, is if we got the mount for the TV, then maybe we'd replace the TV with an Amazon TV so that not only would we have space underneath the TV, but we can also get rid of the fire cube. At the moment, everything is working and it's not hurting anything. It would just be streamlined and nicer if we were able to replace it. So here West is identifying where the stud is, saying yes, it would be really simple to put a mount on here, and having some discussion of what would it look like if it was mounted, how much space would it give us, and also with the bookshelves the way they are, exactly how big could we possibly get the TV? And the answer is not a whole lot bigger than what we already have. Some, but not a whole lot. But at the end of the day, it goes on to our wish list of things we're saving up for. And in the meantime, we'll go ahead and set up the TV as it is. So I often say moving is an excellent time to go through things and reconsider priorities, reconsider if things are clutter or if they're things that you want to have in your house and keep in your house. But it's also, as you're making all these choices about your environment and reconsidering the things you had taken for granted, it's very easy to get into the mode of, oh, this is only $15. Oh, this is only $20. Oh, we can justify this for $50. And it's a slippery slope of replacing things that may or may not need to be replaced. For me, I often get overwhelmed in these situations and try to keep track of what is a need and what versus what is a want, what needs to happen now versus what can wait. Like, for example, in this time period when we were considering these things, I did go ahead and say, yes, order a cord, because at some point, somehow, the power cord to my sewing machine got lost, and we did not find it. I'm afraid it might have been in the bottom of a box in the middle of wrapping paper or something. But regardless, my sewing machine was not functioning and not able to function without a power cord. And that was one thing I said, yes, let's do that sooner than later, because there are sewing projects that are waiting for me to work on. Yes, technically I could wait and save up for the power cord and not do it immediately. But those are just discussions we get to have. And I am grateful for having a husband who is willing to spend the time to talk through all these types of conversations and doesn't get impatient and doesn't get frustrated. And we're both willing to say what's a priority for you versus what's a priority for me versus what's our conclusion as a couple. But I've always grown up in a tech-savvy household. My brothers were very big into tech, and so marrying a guy in the IT industry just feels like normal life, that somebody can figure out all the cords, figure out all the programs, get into the setup of stuff and fix things. And West has been doing that basically as long as there's been computers in his life. Early teenage years, working with all the different technologies as they've come and gone. So there's lots of things I can troubleshoot, but it's also easy to say, hey, can you look at this? And there's a moment where I was, it's not that our setup is perfect. The TV wasn't responsive to the controller, so it could improve, it could get better, but does it have to happen now? No. So here we're putting a telephone cord, sorry, that's a throwback. Here we're putting a phone charging cord over next to the other nightstand and next to the sofa, because that's another place where it's commonly used. This is an actual antenna, however you say that word, to pick up TV channels from the air that we had draped over our TV and TV area for the longest time. We honestly forgot that it was even there. We forgot that we even could get channels for free. The main reason we have this is for emergency purposes. If the internet goes down and we're trying to get news, then we like to have an option to tune into the local news channels. But we're not a family that tends to sit around and watch TV. If we watch anything, it's usually streamed. Honestly, 90% of our entertainment is through YouTube itself, or streaming a movie through like Prime Video or our daughter's different accounts that she subscribes to. So one of the reasons we were testing that and seeing if we're even interested in keeping it is because we were running out of ports to plug things into. So our conclusion was, yes, it works. Yes, we can get some things, but we'll go ahead and just put it into our cupboard where all of our emergency supplies are, because in reality, we'll want to use it during emergencies, and that's where we'll go to look for it. And we don't necessarily have to have it always plugged in. We'd prefer to have the other things plugged in instead. So this was us testing the PlayStation. Our immediate family, I'm the one that likes to play PlayStation, but I don't often have time to do it anymore. We did get some games to play as a couple. They're the Lego Indiana Jones and Star Wars, and it's a Lego series that is one of the rare games that actually has two players playing together. It's just a thing that we could do as a couple, and sometimes that's helpful and fun to pull out and play around with. Definitely works on your communication skills while you're under stress. Now we're moving on to discussing the light over the keyboard, because previously when it was on the other wall, we had that particular shelf with the LED light strip over it, pointing down so I could have light over the keyboard. And we were trying to consider whether or not it'd be useful over the keyboard now. And our other thought was, Wes was saying it'd be nice to have a light over the puzzle table, which I completely agree with. And so we were testing to see how the puzzles fit on the different shelves. And here we're going back to this idea of putting it over the keyboard. And I was telling him it's very annoying to see those lights directly, so we need to have some sort of block in order to protect your eyes from them when you glance over there. So we're playing around with that idea. It's kind of funny because as part of the remodel process, we actually took down a big light box over this window that was left over from the 1950s or later, that had a fluorescent light bulbs in it that was never used. And so the idea of putting another shelf up there with a light was a little bit silly. But I told West my ultimate desire is to just have a clip light on the object that holds my music. No, nothing fancy, nothing that needs to be mounted to the wall, just something directly above the music. And in reality, the vast majority of the time when I'm using the keyboard, I'm using my iPad to follow music on it. I'm not using paper music. But there is an odd time, I'm sure, that I'll want to use paper music. That being said, it's been a long time since I've been able to have the time and have the headspace to go back to learning the keyboard. But that is one of my goals. So here we are going back to discussing this shelf with the LED strip and talking about how to transfer it or how to modify it in order to go over the puzzle area. I had decided that I really wanted this shelf over there because it was deeper, and some of those puzzle boxes they're just odd shaped, and I don't like them hanging off the shelf too much. So we performed a slight surgery on the LED light to reduce it down. It's one of those modern LED strips where it has a self-adhesive on one side. And here I was taking the transformer off and taking off the adhesive off the back of it so that we can reposition it as we change the shelf to fit the space. And just as we discussed with the shelf over the keyboard, we wanted to see what kind of protection we'd need to put on the shelf to protect our eyes from the LED light when it's over the puzzle table. And so this was a discussion about what height the shelf should be, and also how we can block the light. And it was interesting holding this up and seeing, because you can see, depending on how deep and how long that block is, it actually blocked out various parts of the table. So I'm glad we tested this out before we went over and did any permanent modifications to this shelf. But the next step was to take one of the brackets off of it, because it would need to be repositioned as we changed the length of the shelf. These particular brackets we really like. They're heavy duty metal, and we had found them from a small producer off of Amazon. I don't know what they call them, but it's a small business that produces things. And so a lot of our open shelves around our house have these brackets that were handmade by somebody locally. One thing we did find when we were remodeling is that when we took down the shelves, they actually did take some of the drywall off. So we had to do some drywall repair, which was unfortunate and kind of frustrating because we never really expected that to happen. But here is the usefulness of having a garage with all sorts of random things squirreled away in it. This board has literally been in the corner of our garage for, I honestly don't know how long. It's literally just been a background thing in our home. So here's Wes trimming down the shelf to the measurement that we wanted. And it was unfortunate that we had to cut both sides of it, because those two ends aren't going to necessarily be useful for a whole lot else. But because of that LED strip being stuck down and us not being confident of being able to restick it and reposition it, that's just how the project had to happen. So here we are talking about the strip to protect our eyes from the light and how long it should be, and testing out our concept. And I am grateful that we took it back into the house, plugged it in to test it out in situ and make sure that it's not blocking a whole lot of light. It wasn't until we were standing here discussing it that I realized I didn't like the board not going the full length of the shelf. And then West opened up and said he didn't like the fact that if he put a board over the entire length of the shelf, then there would be a gap whenever that board went across where the brackets were. West is testing out his idea of how to work around the brackets and make the board more snug, more fitted, and looking more custom. And with his saw, he was able to do a pretty darn good job, so we were happy with that. And so he moved on to marking and cutting the actual board that would go on the shelf, so we could cut down the length of it, and then I don't know what to call those little pockets that would go around the brackets. So here, as we were working on this, he was placing the other bracket, because now is a good time to put it there so we can know where to put the workaround on the trim piece. It's very useful having a saw that you can set the depth to for projects like these, so you're not cutting through the whole thing, you're just trimming off pieces of it, shaving off the edge. Here he's pulling out his nail gun so we could put some finishing nails on this to attach the trim piece. And his air compressor is very loud and bothers my ears. I'm grateful that we have it, but it doesn't change the fact that it's loud. So I'm also grateful that we have earmuffs that I can use around loud equipment. I use these in the house when I'm using my blender, my grain mill, sometimes even my vacuum. It just depends on how much noises are bothering me. But with that attached, I moved on to the process of sanding down the edges and all the different corners of this freshly cut wood. That's part of the projects I like to do and I feel perfectly comfortable doing. Yes, I'm sure we would have liked a fancier piece of wood to be on the trim, but like I was talking about, we're getting to the point where it'd be nice if we can do the projects we're doing with zero cost and using the things we already own, rather than only waiting for the ideal circumstances and our ideal products in order to move forward. But at the end of the day, I think the shelf turned out very nice, and I don't look at it and go, wow, that wood doesn't work. It all came together at the end of the day. So dusting it off, getting a glove on, and then pulling out the stain that I've used throughout our house for different woodworking projects. And this is as simple as using a paper towel, dipping it in there and rubbing it on. And it's very interesting. I just recently found a YouTube channel I think it's called Flipping Drawers, where he does restorations and everything. And there is something called, I'm going to get it wrong, but it's a spray he puts on things after he sands. And then when he puts stain on it, then when you put stain on the end pieces, the cut pieces, it doesn't go crazy dark. It's the coolest thing. I never knew it existed at all. If I ever have a chance to have more woodworking and refinishing projects and ability to work on things like that, I think that'd be a fun project to look into. Because I always think that the cut end pieces of the wood stand out odd because it just soaks up so much stain. But the fact that there's a product out there to work around that problem and make it so it blends in with the rest, then I'm grateful. So here we are on the next day, because we had to wait for the shelf to air out and the stain to dry. And there's the shelf leaning against the wall right in front of West. And as he was testing and finding the holes in the wall that he wanted to have, he was telling me, I need screws for these ones and I need anchors for those ones, because on one side we hit a stud and the other side we didn't. But West has some drywall anchors he really likes, and it gives him confidence in hanging things wherever he wants to around the house now. I'm sure I could put up a picture of them. But on that side, it was a matter of anchors before the screws. And on the other side, it was simply screws. And can you tell I'm eager to have this project put together? So excited to put the puzzles on the shelf and give them a home. And then as we noticed that our puzzle table was extremely wiggly and not very stable. And as he worked on routing the wire away from the edge, because reusing the shelf, the cord ended up on the side of the walkway, which we didn't really prefer. So we had gone to Walmart and got some cord managing command hooks that he could put underneath the shelf. I went out and found an Allen wrench and tightened up the table, and it was quite steady again. But especially with the command hook things that are hanging, it's also helpful to press and hold it down for, 15 to 30 seconds. I don't remember what the package said, but it definitely helps with the long-term hangability of the command strips. But routing the wires over into the corner definitely made it look more finished and more put together, and definitely less of a tripping hazard than having the cord on the outside. And here, to finish that area, we took the time to hang my decoration above it. This little board used to go in the hallway. But with the rearranging of the living room, I think this is a nice place to have it. Because you often are dreaming when you are sitting down, putting a puzzle together, or relaxing and watching a TV show, or playing a game with loved ones. So this concludes our projects that we started on the 15th. And here we are discussing which puzzle we want to set out. Because just like my art area, I like to have the puzzle table set up so that anybody can come by and sit down and put a few pieces together. And it's accessible and easy for everybody to use. So thank you for joining us on this project day that spanned into the following day. Until next time, feel free to like and subscribe, and I hope you have a wonderful day.